Alara wandered through the frost-bitten forest, her breath forming tiny clouds in the sharp morning air. The world around her was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. She wrapped her thin cloak tighter around her shoulders, though it did little to keep out the cold. Solitude had been her companion for as long as she could remember, and she had grown used to it. Still, something in the air felt different today, heavier, as though the forest itself was trying to warn her. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she made her way along the narrow path. Her eyes scanned the white expanse, sharp and cautious. Alara had learned early in life that danger often hid where one least expected it. The forest was filled with whispers of creatures that prowled silently, their eyes gleaming in the dark. But Alara had always trusted her instincts, and her instincts had never failed her. That's when she heard it, a small, pitiful whimper, barely audible over the wind. She froze, straining her ears. There it was again, soft and fragile, trembling with fear. The sound came from a thicket just ahead. Alara approached cautiously, her heart beating faster. Pushing aside the snow-laden branches, she gasped. A tiny wolf pup lay there, shivering violently, its fur matted and soaked with blood. Its eyes, wide with pain and confusion, locked onto hers, and something inside her cracked. Without thinking, she knelt and reached out, speaking in the softest of tones. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." Her hands trembled as she carefully lifted the pup into her arms. He was smaller than any wolf she had seen, frail and weak, but his spirit, she could tell, was unbroken. Alara hurried back to her cabin, a modest shelter tucked among the trees. Inside, the hearth glowed faintly, the flames struggling against the cold that seeped through the walls. She laid the pup on a blanket and examined his wounds. Cuts marred his tiny body, and his breathing was shallow. "I don't know who did this to you, or why," she murmured, brushing the snow from his fur, "but you're safe now." Days turned into nights and nights into weeks. Alara tended to the pup tirelessly. She fed him warm broth, bandaged his wounds, and whispered stories to him as he slowly regained his strength. She named him Kale, a name that felt right on her tongue, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Kale grew under her care, his legs strengthening, his eyes brightening with life. Alara watched him hunt, play, and explore, marveling at how fast he was learning. She spoke to him as though he could understand every word, and in a way she knew he did. Kale's loyalty and trust became her anchor in the vast loneliness of the forest. Yet even in her sanctuary, Alara felt the faintest ripple of unease. Shadows seemed to move where they shouldn't, and strange noises echoed through the trees at night. Sometimes she caught glimpses of a figure watching her from afar, a tall silhouette that melted into the darkness before she could identify it. She tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on Kale and the fragile life she had saved. One evening, under a sky smeared with the light of a blood-red moon, Alara noticed something strange. Kale was restless, pacing in the small clearing outside her cabin. His eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, and a low, almost musical growl vibrated in his chest. Alara. His voice was not human, yet somehow she understood. She froze, heart pounding. Slowly, Kale's form began to shift. His legs lengthened, his body grew larger, and his fur shimmered with a strange ethereal light. When the transformation stopped, he stood before her not as a small pup, but as a young wolf of majestic size and power, his eyes still soft with the trust she had earned. Alara stumbled back, awed and frightened. "Kyle, what? How?" He tilted his head, his gaze steady. She could feel the strength radiating from him, a force that was both terrifying and beautiful. It was as though the forest itself had imbued him with life beyond the ordinary, a gift or perhaps a burden she did not yet understand. Despite her fear, Alara felt a swell of pride. "You've grown stronger than I imagined," she whispered. She reached out, letting her hand rest lightly on his fur. Kale nuzzled her gently, a reminder that beneath this extraordinary power he was still the pup she had saved. But that night, the forest stirred with more than the wind. A distant howl echoed through the trees, long and commanding. Alara's stomach tightened. It was unlike any wolf call she had heard, deeper, more commanding, and full of authority. She felt it in her bones, a call that spoke to Kale as though he were not entirely hers to keep. Kale stiffened, ears pricked, his body taut with awareness. The howl came again, and this time it seemed closer, almost at the edge of the clearing. Alara's pulse quickened. "They found you," she whispered. dread pooling in her chest. And I don't know if I can stop them. Kyle stepped closer to her, protective and resolute, a silent promise that whatever was coming, they would face it together. Yet even as she held him close, a shadow moved beyond the trees. Ilara's instinct screamed that this was no ordinary predator. Something powerful, ancient, and aware of Kale's existence was approaching. The night stretched on, tense and alive. Ilara couldn't sleep, her eyes scanning the darkness, listening to every snap of a branch, every whisper of the wind. Kale sat at her side, calm yet alert, a glowing presence against the darkness. Despite the fear curling in her stomach, she felt a fierce pride. She had saved this life. She had given it a home, but now the world was reaching for it. The howl came again, closer this time, and with it came a second, fainter voice, cold, commanding, and undeniably human. Ilara's heart clenched. She had no idea who or what was coming for Kale. But she knew one thing: her peaceful life, the quiet world she had built, was about to shatter. She stood in the cabin doorway, Kale at her side, feeling the chill of the forest night biting at her skin. Her eyes swept over the trees, straining to see, to anticipate the arrival of whatever force was coming. Ilara, Kale's low, rumbling growl was both warning and question. She swallowed hard, taking a deep breath. "We protect each other," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "No matter what comes." The wind stirred the branches, carrying the faintest whisper of movement. Riders, perhaps, or something else entirely. The distant howl rolled again through the forest, and with it came the knowledge that Kale's life was entwined with something far greater than she had ever imagined. As the first shadow appeared between the trees, tall and impossibly commanding, Ilara tightened her grip on Kale's fur. The moment stretched, heavy and electric. She could feel the pulse of magic in the air, a vibration that made her skin tingle and her heart race. Kyle growled low in his throat, eyes fixed on the approaching figure. Ilara braced herself, her mind racing. She had saved this life from death, from loneliness, from despair. She would not, could not let it be taken from her now. The shadow moved closer, and she could see him clearly for the first time. Tall, armored in dark leather, with a presence that seemed to command even the forest itself. His eyes, sharp and piercing, locked on Kale. There was recognition in them, something ancient and unyielding. "Ilara," the man's voice came, smooth and unflinching, yet layered with curiosity and something almost softer beneath. "I have come for him." Her heart pounded in her chest. "He is mine," she said firmly, though her hands shook. "I found him. I raised him. He belongs with me." The man's lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile, yet it did not reach his eyes. "He belongs to the world, to a destiny far beyond these woods. And I am the one who will see it fulfilled," Kale growled, stepping protectively in front of Ilara. The air between them crackled with tension, a silent battle of wills forming in the cold night. Ilara's fingers dug into Kale's fur. "Then we will see who protects him," she whispered. The man studied them both for a long moment, his gaze sharp as steel. Then, with a voice that seemed to echo through the trees, he said, "This is only the beginning." As he melted back into the darkness, the forest seemed to exhale. Ilara and Kale remained in the doorway, hearts racing, ears straining for the sound of his return. The bond between them pulsed stronger than ever, an unspoken promise that they would face whatever was coming together. The night was alive with whispers, the frost-crusted trees swaying in quiet anticipation. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, destiny stirred, waiting for the moment it could step into their lives. Ilara hugged Kale close, her resolve hardening. She had saved him once from death. She would do it again, no matter what or who came. And somewhere in the distance the howl came again, long, commanding, and filled with power. They were not alone anymore. The next morning the forest felt different. The frost glimmered on the trees, sparkling like 1,000 tiny diamonds, but Ilara's heart was heavy. The shadow of the previous night lingered, wrapping itself around her like a cold, invisible hand. Kale, now fully grown in form, padded silently beside her, ears twitching at every sound. His muscles were taut with alertness, and his amber eyes reflected a sharp intelligence far beyond any ordinary wolf. Ilara's cabin had been her sanctuary for years, a place where the forest's dangers felt distant, where she could heal and live quietly. But last night had changed everything. Whoever the shadowed figure had been, he knew Kale's true nature. and that meant danger was no longer something she could ignore. Cale stopped suddenly, ears pricked. A rustle in the underbrush made him growl low in his throat. Ilara froze, clutching his fur instinctively. "Shh, it's okay, Cale," she whispered. "Whatever it is, we face it together." The sound grew louder. Hooves against frozen ground, the crunch of snow under heavy boots. Ilara's breath caught. She peered through the trees and saw them. A group of riders clad in black leather and silver armor, their horses moving with an eerie precision. At their head was the same figure from last night, the tall, commanding man with eyes like storm clouds. He dismounted with fluid grace, boots crunching in the snow, and Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine. He approached slowly, deliberately, his gaze fixed on Cale. "I am Dorian," he said, his voice calm yet carrying an undeniable authority, "and I have come for him." Ilara tightened her grip on Cale's fur. "He is not yours to take," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "I found him. I raised him. He belongs with me." Dorian's eyes softened slightly as he studied her. "He is more than a wolf. He carries a power that could change the balance of our world. And that power has a place. Far beyond this forest, far beyond your care." Ilara shook her head, anger and fear twisting inside her. "No, I will not let you take him. I saved him once. I will protect him again, no matter what it takes." Kyle stepped forward, growling, his massive form tense and ready. He circled between Ilara and Dorian, a silent warning. Yet even as he growled, there was something almost respectful in his stance. He recognized Dorian's power, but his loyalty to Ilara was absolute. Dorian raised a hand, not in threat, but in caution. "I do not wish to harm either of you, but Cale's destiny is not yours to decide. He was born for something greater, something that could not survive here, hidden in a forest where no rules apply." Ilara's heart clenched. She had always known that Cale was special, but hearing it spoken aloud made the truth sharper, heavier. She had nurtured him, loved him, and protected him with every ounce of her being, and now someone else claimed a right over him, a right she could not fight with words alone. Days passed, and the tension did not fade. Dorian stayed nearby, not as an invader, but as a shadow on the edge of the forest. He observed quietly, his presence both unsettling and oddly comforting. He did not force Cale to obey, but Cale's instincts recognized Dorian's authority in ways that puzzled Ilara. Ilara tried to maintain her routine, feeding Cale, tending to the cabin, wandering the forest, but the air felt charged with anticipation. She could see the way Cale's gaze often lingered on Dorian, alert, calculating, and she knew that he understood more than she could. The pup she had found and raised had grown into a creature of extraordinary power, and the world beyond her forest was beginning to take notice. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold, Dorian finally approached the cabin. This time there was no shadow, no warning. He simply appeared, stepping over the snow as if it were part of the ground itself. "Ilara," he said softly, "you cannot keep him hidden forever. Others will come, drawn to his power. The forest will not protect him from what is coming." Her hands tightened around the edge of the doorframe. "Then let them come. We will face them." Dorian studied her, and for the first time she saw something flicker in his eyes, something like admiration, maybe even respect. "You are brave," he said. "And stubborn. I can see why Cale is loyal to you. But bravery alone will not be enough." Ilara met his gaze evenly, refusing to show the fear she felt. "I have fought before. I will fight again. He is my responsibility." Dorian nodded slowly as if he understood and yet could not accept it. "Very well," he said. "Then you will need allies. You cannot face what is coming alone." Ilara's heart tightened. She had spent years alone, finding strength in solitude. The thought of relying on someone else, even Dorian, felt strange, foreign, and yet necessary. That night, as the fire crackled in the cabin, Cale rested his massive head on Ilara's lap. She ran her fingers through his thick fur, feeling the warmth and strength beneath her hands. "You're not just my pup anymore, Cale," she whispered. "You're something more. Something the world wants, whether we are ready or not." Cale lifted his head, amber eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart ache. She could feel the weight of his growing power, the pull of his destiny, and the silent promise that he would always stand by her. Suddenly, a howl echoed through the forest. long and commanding. It was deeper and more resonant than any wolf she had ever heard. Cale rose instantly, ears pricked, muscles tense. He padded to the door, peering into the darkness. "Ilara," his voice was soft, almost human in its clarity, though filled with urgency. She followed him to the edge of the clearing, staring into the moonlit trees. "What is it, Kyle?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. Dorian emerged from the shadows, moving silently over the snow. "That is the call of others like him," he said quietly. "Alpha forces drawn to Cale's power. They will not be kind. They will not understand the bond between you two. You must be ready." Ilara's stomach tightened. She had faced dangers before, but this was different. This was not a simple threat of hunger or survival. This was the wider world reaching into her small sanctuary, demanding that she confront forces beyond her understanding. Cale growled low, body rigid. "I will protect her," he said, voice strong and unwavering. Dorian's eyes softened just slightly. "And I will help you if you allow it. You are brave, Ilara, but bravery alone will not keep him safe." For a long moment they stood there in silence, the forest holding its breath around them. The bond between Ilara and Cale was clear, unbreakable, and yet the pull of the wider world was undeniable. She had nurtured him, raised him, loved him, and now she had to prepare for the trials that lay ahead. That night, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of distant voices. Cale's form glimmered faintly in the moonlight, the power within him stirring, alive and restless. Ilara's heart ached with both pride and fear. She had saved him once, but the world beyond the forest would test them in ways she could not yet imagine. She wrapped her cloak tightly around herself, resting a hand on Cale's back. "We face this together," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "No matter what comes, we face it together." But even as she spoke, a shadow moved among the trees. Eyes glimmered in the darkness, watching, waiting. Cale's ears twitched, muscles coiled. Ilara's heart raced, understanding that this was only the beginning. The howl came again, closer this time, filled with power and authority. And in its echo, Ilara felt the weight of a destiny she could no longer avoid. A destiny that would bring the Alpha King and the world beyond her forest directly into her life. As she held Cale close, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her own, she realized one truth. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. And nothing, not even the Alpha King, would break the bond they had forged in the quiet. Frost-covered woods. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. And somewhere, beyond the line of trees, the storm of destiny was beginning to stir. The forest was quiet in the early morning, but the calm felt false. Ilara sensed it in the way the trees stood unnaturally still, in the weight of the air pressing against her chest. Kyle padded silently beside her, muscles coiled, ears twitching at every sound. The bond between them was stronger than ever, yet something hung over them, a sense of approaching storm, unseen but undeniable. Dorian emerged from the shadows near the edge of the clearing. He moved with the certainty of someone who belongs to the world beyond the forest, his presence commanding even when silent. His eyes, sharp and stormy, scanned the area before settling on Kyle. "He grows stronger," Dorian said, his voice quiet, yet layered with both awe and concern. "And he is not yet ready for what is coming." Ilara bristled at the words, though she did not speak them aloud. She had raised Cale, nurtured him, fought for him when he was just a helpless pup. No one had the right to claim that she had not prepared him for life. Still, she could feel the truth in Dorian's warning. The world beyond her forest was vast, dangerous, and filled with forces that would recognize Cale's power and seek to control it. Cale's amber eyes flicked between them, alert and intelligent. He understood more than she ever had, sensing both Dorian's authority and the unseen threat lurking beyond the trees. His growl was low, a warning that even Ilara could feel vibrating through the ground. Dorian stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You cannot face this alone," he said. "You have strength, courage, and a bond that many would envy. But power like his draws others. Forces you cannot anticipate. You must learn to trust me, and through me, the world beyond this forest." Ilara's hands tightened into fists. "I trust no one who would take him from me," she replied. Her voice was steady, though her heart raced. She had lived alone for years, relying only on herself and Cale. The idea of needing anyone else felt foreign and dangerous. Dorian's gaze softened slightly. "I do not wish to take him. I wish to guide him, to protect him." But if we do not act, you may lose him anyway. Cale growled again, shifting protectively in front of her. Ilara knelt, resting a hand on his back. He is not yours to guide, she said softly yet firmly. He is mine. I raised him. I saved him. I will protect him no matter what comes. Dorian studied her for a long moment. Bravery alone will not be enough, he said finally. And sometimes protection comes from more than courage. Sometimes it comes from allies. Ilara did not respond. She could see the truth in his words even as she resisted it. She had survived because she relied on herself. But the danger now felt larger, heavier, and beyond the limits of even her careful vigilance. As the day wore on, the forest itself seemed to grow restless. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying whispers of movement through the branches. Shadows flitted between the trees, too quick to follow, too silent to track. Cale's muscles tensed, his fur bristling. And Ilara knew instinctively that they were being watched. By afternoon, a figure stepped from the shadows, a creature cloaked in dark. Tattered robes, eyes glowing faintly red. It moved with unnatural grace, and the air around it seemed to chill, carrying a subtle hum of power. Ilara, Dorian said sharply, stepping in front of her. Stay behind me. The creature paused, tilting its head as though assessing them before letting out a low, eerie growl. Cale's eyes narrowed and he stepped forward, protective and imposing. You cannot hide him forever, the creature said, voice echoing like a whisper carried on the wind. The power he carries is not meant for a forest, not meant for a human guardian. He belongs to the world that waits beyond your walls of solitude. Ilara felt her heart tighten. He belongs to me, she said, stepping forward despite the fear twisting inside her. I found him. I raised him. I will not let you take him, Cale growled. A deep rumble that resonated through the ground. The creature's eyes flared red in response, and the air between them seemed to crackle with tension. Dorian moved swiftly, placing himself between Ilara and the creature. Back! He commanded, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to push the forest itself to attention. You will not harm them. The creature laughed softly, a sound like the rustling of dry leaves. And who are you to stop me, Alpha King? Dorian's eyes hardened. I am Dorian, and you will not touch them. The creature's smile widened, a cruel, knowing curve. It lunged suddenly, faster than any human could move. Cale's form shifted instinctively, growing larger, stronger, fur glowing faintly in the dim light. He met the attack with a fierce leap, colliding with the creature with a force that shook the ground. Ilara gasped, gripping a nearby tree for support. She watched in awe and fear as Cale's strength met the creature's dark power. Sparks of light and shadow collided in the clearing, and the sound of the impact echoed through the forest like thunder. Dorian moved alongside Cale, his hands glowing faintly with energy as he pushed against the creature's attack. The three of them moved as one, Kyle, Ilara, and Dorian, each relying on the other's strength, each bound by the same urgent purpose: survival. The battle was fierce but brief. The creature recoiled, retreating into the shadows with a hiss that promised it would return. Cale's form shrank back to his normal size, panting heavily, fur matted with frost and sweat. Ilara rushed to his side, brushing her hands through his fur, checking for injuries. You did well, she whispered, relief flooding her chest. You are strong. Stronger than I imagined. Kyle pressed his head against her shoulder, a silent acknowledgement. His eyes flicked toward Dorian, amber glowing softly as if recognizing his role in their survival. Dorian's gaze met hers. There was tension, unspoken words, a silent negotiation between two people who understood the stakes but could not yet trust fully. You cannot keep him hidden here, he said quietly. The forest will not protect him forever. Others will come, stronger and more determined than that creature. Ilara's jaw tightened. Then we fight, together. Dorian's eyes softened slightly, almost imperceptibly. Together, he agreed. As night fell, the three of them settled near the cabin. Cale rested his massive head on Ilara's lap, exhausted but alert. She stroked his fur, feeling the warmth of life, of loyalty, of trust. Do you understand? She whispered. They will come again. The world will not leave you alone, but I will not let them take you. Not now, not ever. Cale's eyes met hers, amber glowing faintly in the firelight. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if acknowledging the truth of her words. Dorian stood nearby, his gaze distant. He seemed to wrestle with himself, as if measuring the risks and the costs of staying in this forest. beside Alara and Kale. The night was quiet but heavy with anticipation, every shadow carrying the promise of danger yet to come. Alara knew one thing clearly. The world beyond her forest had begun to reach for Kale, and she could not hide from it any longer. But for now, in the quiet of the cabin, she allowed herself a brief moment of peace. She had faced death, solitude, and fear before, and now with Kale by her side and Dorian reluctantly allied with them, she would face whatever came next. Yet even in this fragile moment of calm, the forest whispered warnings. A distant howl echoed in the darkness, deeper, more commanding than before. Kyle rose instantly, ears pricked, fur bristling. Alara's heart tightened as she realized the truth. This was only the beginning. The shadows shifted beyond the trees, and a cold wind carried a whisper of movement. Alara clutched Kale's fur, feeling the steady pulse of his power and the warmth of his loyalty. "Whatever comes," she whispered, "we face it together." Kale's growl rumbled softly in agreement, and Dorian's gaze lingered on them both, stormy and unreadable. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. And somewhere, beyond the edge of the clearing, forces were gathering, drawn by Kale's power and the bond he shared with Alara. The first trial was over. But the next was coming, and when it arrived, it would demand everything: strength, courage, and the bonds of trust that were only just beginning to form. Alara felt the weight of it all, but she refused to falter. Kale had survived against the odds once. Together they would survive again. And whatever the world sent, they would face it side by side, their bond unbroken, their resolve unshakable. The forest was alive with tension. Even the trees seemed to lean closer to watch, their branches creaking softly in the wind. Alara moved cautiously, Kale padding silently at her side, muscles taut with alertness. Dorian walked a few steps ahead, his eyes scanning the surroundings, every movement precise, calculated. The events of the past days weighed heavily on her. She had fought to protect Kyle, stood against forces she didn't fully understand, and yet the world beyond her forest was reaching closer with every passing moment. Alara had always thought that solitude kept her safe. Now she realized it was only a fragile illusion. "We must leave this forest," Dorian said, his voice low, steady. "Staying here is no longer safe. The forces drawn to Kale's power will not stop. You cannot protect him alone." Alara shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "I've protected him so far," she said firmly. "I will not run, not yet. This is our home. Kale's home." Kale growled softly, his ears twitching. He understood the truth of Dorian's words, even if Alara did not. His amber eyes flicked between her and Dorian, loyal and protective, yet aware of the dangers that lurked beyond the trees. Dorian's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "I know this place means everything to you," he said. "But the world outside is calling, and if we do not act, others will come. Stronger, faster. They will not care about your bond with him. Only about the power he carries?" Alara's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wanted to argue, to fight, to prove that she could handle it. But deep down, she knew he was right. The forest could no longer shelter them. The dangers were coming, and Kale's destiny would not wait for anyone, no matter how much they loved him. As night fell, they made camp in a small clearing. The fire crackled, throwing flickering shadows across the snow. Kyle lay beside Alara, his body warm, strong, and alive with energy. She ran her fingers through his fur, feeling the pulse of life and power beneath her hands. "You have grown beyond what I imagined," she whispered, her voice soft in the quiet night. "But the world, it will demand more of you, and of us." Kyle's amber eyes met hers, understanding, unwavering. He pressed his head gently against her shoulder, a silent reassurance that no matter what came, they would face it together. Dorian knelt across from her, the firelight illuminating the sharp lines of his face. "We leave at dawn," he said. "There is a sanctuary far from here, a place where Kale can train, grow, and learn to control his power. But the journey will be dangerous. We will be tested." Alara felt her stomach tighten. She had lived all her life in the quiet of the forest, relying only on herself and Kale. The idea of venturing into the wider world, of facing unknown dangers, was terrifying. Yet she also knew that staying would only put them both at greater risk. "I will go," she said firmly. "For Cale. For us. I will face whatever comes." Dorian studied her for a long moment, his stormy eyes unreadable. "Very well," he said finally. "But know this. The path ahead is not only dangerous, it will test your trust, your courage, and your bond with him. You must be ready to face what lies beyond, and to fight not just with strength but with heart." The night passed slowly, the wind whispering through the trees, carrying hints of the trials to come. Ilara barely slept, her mind restless, filled with thoughts of what awaited them. She felt Cale shift beside her, his presence a comforting warmth in the cold night. By dawn, the forest was bathed in pale light, snow sparkling like shattered glass. Ilara, Cale, and Dorian set out, moving quietly through the trees. Each step felt deliberate, cautious, as though the forest itself were testing them, warning them of what lay ahead. Hours passed, and the forest gradually gave way to hills and rocky terrain. The landscape was stark, beautiful, and dangerous, with sheer cliffs and icy streams cutting through the land. Every shadow seemed to hide potential threats, and every sound carried the possibility of ambush. Cale's senses were sharp, every muscle attuned to the environment. He would pause, ears flicking, eyes scanning, before moving again, always protective of Ilara. She could feel the strength in him, raw and untamed, yet controlled by the bond they shared. Dorian walked alongside her, a silent guardian, occasionally glancing around with a measured vigilance. Though he did not speak often, Ilara could sense the weight of his thoughts. He was assessing the land, calculating risks, and preparing for dangers she could not yet see. By midday they reached a narrow pass between two jagged cliffs. The wind howled through the gap, carrying snow and debris, and the temperature dropped sharply. Cale paused at the entrance, his body tense, ears pricked. "They are here," he whispered, his voice low but filled with urgency. Ilara felt her heart tighten. She followed Cale's gaze and saw them, figures moving through the pass, shadowy shapes that blended with the rocks and snow. Their movements were deliberate, silent, predatory. Dorian stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "Prepare yourselves," he said. "They will not approach openly. They are hunters drawn to his power." The first attack came swiftly. Shadows lunged from the rocks, shapes that were neither fully human nor fully animal, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. Cale leapt forward, his form shifting, growing larger, fur shimmering with energy as he intercepted them. The clash of power sent sparks through the air, and the ground beneath them trembled with force. Ilara fought alongside him, using her wits and agility to avoid attacks and protect Cale. Dorian moved with precision, his hands glowing as he channeled energy to block and repel their attackers. The three of them moved as one, a synchronized force of determination, loyalty, and power. The battle was fierce, but their bond held. Cale's strength, guided by his loyalty to Ilara, proved unstoppable. The attackers, realizing they could not overcome him, retreated into the shadows, leaving the pass silent once more. Ilara's breath came in heavy gasps as she knelt beside Cale, brushing the snow from his fur. "We made it," she whispered. "We survived. Together." Cale pressed his head against her shoulder, amber eyes warm and steady. Ilara felt the weight of their journey ahead, the dangers that would come, and the growing power within him. She knew that this was only the beginning. Dorian stood nearby, his gaze distant. "This path will not be easy," he said quietly. "But you are stronger than you realize. And Cale, he is more than you could have imagined. Together, you may be able to face what lies ahead." Ilara's heart tightened. She had always believed in the strength of her bond with Cale, but now she understood that their journey would test them in ways she could not yet foresee. She had nurtured him, loved him, and protected him. And now, the world was demanding more than she had ever imagined. As night fell, they set up a small camp near a hidden cave, shielded from the wind. Cale lay beside her, his form glowing faintly in the moonlight, his eyes alert even in rest. Ilara ran her fingers through his fur, feeling the pulse of his power and the loyalty that bound him to her. "You are ready for this," she whispered softly. "I know you are, and I will be here, every step of the way." Kyle's eyes met hers, filled with understanding, trust, and unwavering loyalty. He shifted closer, resting his head on her lap, a silent reassurance that whatever came, they would face it together. Dorian remained standing, gazing into the darkness beyond the cave. His expression was unreadable, but Ilara could sense the tension beneath the surface. He was calculating, preparing, and yet she felt a faint flicker of respect in his gaze. The night was quiet, but the air was charged with anticipation. Somewhere beyond the mountains, forces were gathering, drawn to Kale's power and the bond he shared with Ilara. The first trial was over, but the greater tests were yet to come. Ilara held Kale close, feeling the warmth of life, strength, and loyalty. She had saved him once, nurtured him, and now faced a world that would challenge everything they had built together. But she would not falter. She would not let fear control her. And whatever the trials ahead, one truth remained. Kale was hers, and she would protect him no matter what. But in the distance, a storm was brewing, a storm that would test their courage, their bond, and their hearts. And when it came, nothing would ever be the same. The storm had come. Dark clouds rolled over the mountains, lightning cutting through the sky, illuminating the jagged cliffs and frozen valleys below. The wind howled through the pass, carrying a sense of urgency, danger, and inevitability. Ilara tightened her cloak around her, feeling Kale press close, his body tense with anticipation. They had traveled far from the safety of her forest, guided by Dorian, toward the sanctuary where Kale could train and learn to master his extraordinary power. Yet even with their destination in sight, the world was not willing to let them pass quietly. Forces had gathered, drawn by Kale's strength, by the bond he shared with Ilara, and by the promise of power that shimmered around him like a living aura. Dorian's eyes, stormy and unreadable, scanned the horizon. "They are close," he said, his voice tight with focus. "We cannot delay. They will test him and us. Every step from here is a battle." Ilara's heart pounded, but she held her head high. "Then we face them," she said firmly. "Together." Kyle growled softly, his amber eyes glowing brighter in the fading light. He shifted into his larger form, fur shimmering faintly with energy. His muscles rippled, every movement precise and powerful. Ilara felt the warmth of his loyalty and the strength of his resolve. She reached out, placing her hand against his fur. "We have come this far, Kale. We will not falter now." Dorian nodded, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "You are ready, Ilara. He is ready. Trust in yourselves and in each other." From the shadows of the cliffs, figures began to emerge, creatures of shadow and frost, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. They moved like a single entity, silent, coordinated, a living wave of threat. Ilara felt the tension coil in her chest, but she did not step back. Kyle stepped forward, a growl vibrating deep in his chest. His form grew larger, stronger, as if feeding on the fear and power of those around him. The bond between them thrummed like a living pulse, and Ilara could feel it in every nerve, every heartbeat. The first of the attackers lunged, a shadowy figure moving faster than the eye could follow. Kale intercepted, his massive form colliding with the enemy, energy sparking on impact. The clash shook the ground beneath them, and the sound of the struggle echoed through the cliffs like thunder. Ilara moved quickly, dodging attacks and protecting Kale from any threat that managed to slip past him. She had trained for moments like this in her own way, silent, agile, and aware. Every instinct, every lesson learned in the forest guided her actions. Dorian was a whirlwind of calculated strikes and protective energy. His hands glowed as he created shields, redirected attacks, and channeled force to repel the enemies. Together, the three of them formed an unbreakable unit, each relying on the other's strength, skill, and loyalty. As the battle raged, Kale's power began to awaken fully. The energy within him, restrained for so long, surged outward, illuminating the night with a brilliant golden glow. The attackers recoiled, shielding their eyes, their coordination faltering in the face of such raw, uncontained force. Ilara felt the warmth of that power, felt it pulse through her as if it recognized her presence, her bond, and her unwavering commitment. She whispered Kale's name, and he responded with a roar that shook the cliffs, sending the remaining attackers fleeing into the darkness. The storm above mirrored the intensity below. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and the wind howled, but amidst it all, Ilara, Kale, and Dorian stood unbroken, victorious for now, but aware that the world's trials were far from over. Kale shifted back to his normal size, breathing heavily but calm. He pressed his head against Ilara's shoulder, and she wrapped her arms around him, feeling the strength, the loyalty, and the unspoken gratitude in his gaze. "You did it," she whispered, voice trembling with relief and pride. "We did it. Together." Dorian stepped closer, his stormy eyes softer than she had ever seen them. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "His power has awakened, yes, but the world beyond this sanctuary will test it. Test you both. You have survived this night, but the journey ahead will demand more than strength. It will demand courage, trust, and the willingness to embrace what you cannot yet understand." Ilara nodded, taking a deep breath. "Then we will face it," she said. "Together, no matter what comes." For a long moment, the three of them stood in the quiet after the storm, the forest and cliffs holding their breath around them. Kale rested beside her, eyes alert, amber glowing softly in the fading lightning. Dorian remained nearby, vigilant yet calm, his presence a steadying force. As dawn broke, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold, Ilara felt a sense of resolve settle over her. The dangers would come again, but she had faced them and she had survived. Kale's power had been tested, and their bond had only grown stronger. And with Dorian by their side, cautious and watchful, she felt a fragile hope that they could navigate the challenges ahead. They continued their journey toward the sanctuary, the path still treacherous, yet their steps lighter than before. The bond between Ilara and Kale was now unbreakable, forged in trials, danger, and unwavering loyalty. And Dorian, for all his stormy demeanor and calculated precision, had become an unexpected ally, guiding them, protecting them, and perhaps understanding the depth of their connection in ways words could not express. The forest gradually gave way to open plains, and in the distance the sanctuary awaited, a place of safety, training, and understanding, where Kale could learn to control the extraordinary power that pulsed through him. Ilara's heart lifted at the sight, but she knew that even within its walls challenges would await. As they approached, Kale paused, sniffing the air, muscles coiled with anticipation. "We are close," he said, voice steady and certain, "but this is only the beginning of what I must learn." Ilara reached out, resting her hand on his fur. "I will be here," she said softly. "Every step of the way, always." Dorian fell into step beside them, his gaze scanning the horizon, thoughtful and measured. "And I will guide you," he said quietly. "But remember, the path will test more than strength. It will test heart, trust, and understanding. You must face it as one, together." The sanctuary loomed ahead, a fortress of stone and light surrounded by ancient trees and protected by wards older than memory. Ilara felt a sense of awe and reverence as they approached. It was a place of learning, of growth, and of destiny. A place where Kale's power could be honed, and where they could finally understand the depth of what had been set in motion long before they found each other. Kale's eyes glimmered with anticipation, and Ilara felt the warmth of their bond radiate, steady and unyielding. Dorian's gaze softened, just slightly, as he recognized the unbreakable connection between them. They crossed the threshold of the sanctuary together, the storm behind them, but its echoes still lingering in the wind. The trials were far from over, but they had survived, strengthened, and bound themselves in a bond that no force could sever. Ilara felt a sense of peace, fleeting, but precious. She had found Kale when he was helpless, raised him and nurtured him. Now he was strong, extraordinary, and bound to her by loyalty, trust, and love. The world outside could challenge them, test them, and seek to claim what they had built. But together, they were unbreakable. Dorian's voice cut through her thoughts, calm and steady. "The next steps will not be easy, but you are ready." He is ready, and together you will face whatever comes. Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of the journey and the hope that now shone brighter than fear. She had faced solitude, danger, and uncertainty, and emerged stronger. And with Kale by her side, with Dorian guiding them, she knew that whatever the future held, they would face it as one. The storm had passed, But the world was still vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges. Yet Alara's heart was steadfast. She would protect Cale, guide him, and stand by him against whatever forces sought to test their bond. And she would do it with courage, love, and unwavering determination. As they stepped deeper into the sanctuary, the light of dawn catching the frost-covered trees, Alara felt a sense of destiny unfolding. Kyle was no longer just a wolf she had found and raised. He was a force of nature, a protector, and a companion whose loyalty and power would shape the world to come, and she would be there always beside him, ready to face every challenge, every danger, and every trial the world had in store. Because some bonds were stronger than fear, stronger than power, and stronger than destiny itself. Together they had survived. Together they would endure, and together they would face the world, unbroken, unyielding, and bound by a connection that no force could sever.